They say that success is a factor of taking calculated risks that pay off. This week, we talked to Shisia, the Executive Director of the leading bancassurance intermediary in Kenya, about risk-taking and what it takes to get to the top of banking. This is She Means Business. I am your host, Claire Munde. Julia, you're in the risk business. I'd like you to tell us about some of the times that you've encountered risk and risky moves that you've made in your career that paid off and those that haven't paid off.
Thank you for that question. There are many risks we take every day. There are many risks I take every day. And in my career, there are certain risks that I've taken. And some have worked, some haven't worked. And one major one, maybe at the top of mind, was when I moved jobs from a big company to a small company. And this really was purely because my children were very small. And I really needed an environment that would help me nurture them and make them grow. Because every time I came home late in the evening, I left very early, I kept feeling I'm not really giving my all to my kids. And then I got 2 jobs. And one was a big organization, one was a smaller one. But the smaller one looked like it was family friendly and all, and that's what I was looking for. And I went for the smaller organization. It was a really big risk because I looked at the profitability and all that. I wasn't even sure the sustainability of my career at that point. But somehow it turned out to really have been one of the best experiences I had, because now I managed to raise my kids. I managed to actually grow that business. I did my 5 years. By the time I was leaving, my kids were about, I think, 6 years old. I mean, they're okay now. They're going to school. They are not as clingy as they were before. And that really was something I said, it actually paid off, because after that, I went back into the corporate world. And that, for me, was risks that you take sometimes that you think may not work, but they turn out to be okay. And there are those that also that you can think of taking, or you try to take, and then they just don't, work out. Sometimes you're working and you're told, promises. What are you going to achieve for us? And you go there. Sometimes you overpromise, because I'm a very optimistic person, by the way, very optimistic. And then now you have to keep explaining, because it's you nobody forced you. No gun was put to your head. It didn't work. And, explaining paragraphs and paragraphs. And of course you learn as you go that, there's some certain assumptions we make as we go, and we don't really know tomorrow. For example, today we've got the Jay-Z's came, the macros have happened, and many things have happened. Nobody saw that happening. So when you're planning, you're very optimistic. You've got certain assumptions, and then things just don't work. So what do? You carry the lessons. Next time maybe if this, you have to make sure if the scenario remains the same, then what happens. So those are some of the personal risks that I've taken that really have worked, some haven't worked. And now when it comes to organizationally, there's, like when you're investing, you also have to invest in things that actually are going to give returns. So you're in a situation where maybe you need to convince investors or your board or shareholders that you need to acquire maybe a new technology and all, and you're praying that, it better works and it better gives us returns. So, but when the business is an ongoing concern, it's affordable, you can get it. So those are some of the risks that we keep taking, and we keep moving forward, and we just pray that they do work. So basically that's what happens.
Those are a number of good points that you put there. You talked about going to a smaller organization when you had children and whatnot. But finance and banking is a very cutthroat industry. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about some of the tips you would have for other women on how to navigate that. Okay, you're looking at an offer from company A, company B, you're at the childbearing age, you're saying that I need to raise my children. What would you say are some of the tips you'd give to people on how to navigate, how to take one option against the rest?
When you're faced with for example, sometimes it's a cutthroat. The finance industry, as you put it, is a cutthroat sector for sure. And sometimes you're faced with different choices. So choosing one over the other sometimes is very hazy. It can be very gray, And for example, let me talk a bit about women in the finance sector. You find, for example, that most of the senior leadership in the finance sector is male. It's male dominated. And now you find for the women to even move upwards, then there are very many things. Either you have to move companies, or you've got to really go out of your way to work hard and prove yourself, and very, very many other things. And then you're faced, sometimes you're looking for promotion, sometimes you're looking for better pay, sometimes you're looking for many things. So, and then you've got family. And remember, somehow, the way it's just structured, women, you're nurturers. So you'd find even when you're facing family, you've got to organize certain things. So whereas when you're competing in this space, you've got to remember that I've got also these other responsibilities. How do I align them in my life? How do I align my career in my life? So what you do when you're choosing options, you've got to make sure the trade-offs are not extremely costly. They can cost your children, they can cost your health, they can cost many things. They can even cost you that job that you're trying to keep, because then you cannot be able to juggle all that. And also you have to check the environment, because sometimes what I do, I tell people, for me it was more about choosing career and how do I want to move. It was about check even the environment. Just check. What the kind of environment are you? Do some bit of research. Is it something that you can condone, and there are things that you cannot, and then make decisions based on the things that are deep-seated, the values that you believe in. If you can manage, even if it's for like 10 years or whatever, take it. But if you think there's something telling you that this is not it, I suggest you pause until you get the inner voice telling you, try this. Sometimes you need to pause. So that's how you make choices. You listen to your inner voice. Because it will always be right. You can also consult sometimes. You can consult, and people are out there with a lot of good information, and they'll be able to make it clearer for you. Maybe this route you're taking, these are the pros and cons. This route you're taking, pros and cons. Then now when you go alone and reflect, then you realize maybe I need to take option A instead of option B. Just because of you, what are the values you believe in? What are you looking for? What are your goals? So all that should be encompassed when you're trying to make choices.
Yeah, I like the way you've talked about looking at your values before deciding on where to go. And sometimes you see negotiation is important, because you say that sometimes you go to a place, you've done your research, and then you find out, there are some discrepancies in positions. So what would you say about going about such a situation? Because as you said, it's a male-dominated field, and then sometimes there are issues of compensation. Why are women compensated this way and men compensated that? How would you advise women to go about the issue of compensation and taking a seat at the table and saying, this is what I can do for the company, and this is what I should be remunerated?
So what I always, earlier on in my career, what I can say, you always believed the salary that you're given, that's what it is, because you're young, you don't know, you're naive, you're innocent. But when you start checking, you discover there are discrepancies. You start discovering that you get to hear. And you're wondering, I do all this, you start discovering discrepancies, and mostly it will be gender. I've seen a lot of it. Most male will always earn higher than female. So what do you do as a woman to seal that gap? What I learned is to negotiate and share your worth and the value you bring. And it's got to be very clear. And do your research. Do your research. So even when you're coming to the table, you've got facts. This is what I see, this is what the competition is at, this is what you're doing, this is the value, this is the value I bring, this is the whatever. Then now you negotiate, and this is what I believe is my worth. Because sometimes, everybody feels sometimes you may feel like you're paying your workers a lot, but maybe not, So you've got to actually know your worth and what you're worth being paid for, and you've got to negotiate for that, and you've got to have a tough negotiation. So do not feel like, maybe this is what they see. It's what do you think you're worth? And that is how you start your negotiations. And what do you think you can do for the organization? What do you bring on the table? Put that on the table and negotiate from that. Another thing that now I have learned that maybe I never used to do before, there was one mentor who told me, and maybe I can say a coach, you also need to engage even your lawyers, your legal people, to even look at the contracts for you. You know, they really need to comb through the contracts. And when they check the contracts, the good part of the contracts and what should you need to add on the contract, negotiate that way as well. Then you find you get a solid contract. So when now you're in, you know, at least this is what I wanted. And then that's what I tell women. Don't go there feeling maybe. No, you go there knowing your worth and what you bring on the table. And you've done your research and caught it. If somebody wants to hire you because they believe you're going to add value, they will pay you.
Okay. Yeah. Now, this is She Means Business. While we're still on that topic, maybe you can tell us what are some of the things that someone should be looking out for? You're saying, you know, even engage a lawyer. There are things you may not be aware of that you should be looking out for. What are some of the things that someone should be looking out for other than just the basic pay? What does a package look like? When
you're negotiating a contract, you need to look at the things. Some of the things that you look at is things to do, the exit clauses. You look at notice period. You know, sometimes you may find your notice period is 6 months, 3 months, 1 month, you know, and sometimes 6 months can be quite lengthy. Well, I know sometimes depends on the role, but I worked for an organization that it was 1 month regardless of the role you play, which I thought that was a bit comfortable. But when it's lengthy and maybe you've got things that you need to move, then you start realizing you've got to pay. So, you know, you've got to ask yourself, am I ready to sign a contract that's going to tie me this period of time? And then also you need to look at things like, do they do employee shares? Can you get shareholding? Do you want that? You've got to look at their leave days. How many leave days? How do they work? You've got to look at their working hours, from what time to what time. You also need to look at, are their weekends occupied? Do you work over the weekends? Do you not work over the weekends? Because all these, their medical packages, you know, many other benefits that you're looking out for. Because then this now becomes an overall contract. Because sometimes we may focus so much on the money and then we forget these many other things that people negotiate for, because they're equally important. Once you get that, then you know, now I have something solid, maybe I can sign off, or maybe there's this area I need to negotiate a little more, or maybe the leave days are quite few, I don't know. You could be moving with some leave days that maybe you've come from an environment, because I'll tell you an example. I once moved from an employer, we had about, I think, 30 leave days. And then I moved to an employer that had 21 leave days. And what I did not realize was that the 28 days that I had with the other employer never included Saturdays. The 21 days included Saturdays. So it was such a thin leave period. You know, but you don't know that when you're signing. You just see 21, you've only lost 7 days.
Yeah.
Then you come to realize this other one was actually much more. But you've signed. So when you do the maths, you realize really the net effect, maybe you should have just stayed here or negotiated a little harder. So that's why you really have to check your contracts line by line when you're moving.
I think those are important points to note. I'd like us to go into talking about a bit on banking and finance. You know, you're the head of bancassurance here. I'd like us to talk about insurance. You know, it's a topic that people don't quite understand, and some people find like, what's the benefit? Talk to us a little bit about the role of insurance in our lives, and then we'll talk a little bit more about also financial literacy. Why is insurance important? Because, you know, there are people who think, okay, I need my medical, but then when it comes to issues like life insurance and things like that, those are topics that people still find taboo, especially in our setting. So talk to us about the role of finance and insurance really in our overall financial lives.
Thank you for that. Insurance plays a very pivotal role in our lives today, and I always I always advocate for everybody to have insurance. Everybody. And my dream, honestly, whether it's in this African continent, every household should have some level of insurance, because we sometimes look at insurance from an angle of just paying money. When I get sick, I'll go to hospital, it will pay for my hospital bills and all that and all that. And we go very quickly to the risk that we see. But what I keep reminding us, because I also enjoy a lot of insurance coverage. I have for my house, I've got for education for my children, life insurance in case, a risk happens, all these things. What you're trying to do when you're taking insurance, you are mitigating a lot of risks. And you're transferring risks. Because look, every day you wake up, you're faced with risks. Because you're going to drive to work. You're going to stay there the whole day. And other than that, you're going to interact with people. There are very many things you're going to be doing. You've got people you've employed in your household. You've got your kids. Maybe they're going to school if you have family. So every day you're interacting with a lot of risks. You cannot control sickness. You cannot control death. Now imagine you're probably a breadwinner in a family. People are looking up to you for a lot of things. And if something happens to you, you may not even die. You could just even be bedridden even for a month or two. Remember COVID, some people went even into ICU. But this is the breadwinner. What happens if you don't have insurance? We'll have to go to your savings and get that money, or sell some property, or whatever it is to pay. But if you had some level of insurance, it will come in and pay. If you have medical insurance, it will come and pay. If, for God forbid, if it's death, then you find, at least lucky enough, when you're working for financial organizations, you'll find if you have a loan, you'll have a credit life insurance. So let's say you've taken a mortgage of 20 million, 30 million, 50 million. If you're a breadwinner and death happens, that is paid. So you can imagine if insurance wasn't there, but there's a mortgage of 20 million that is running, really, you've left this family exposed with a 20 million loan, and there is no other income. The income is one. Or maybe it can be two, but this one is the main income. So what happens, So people need to start looking at it like that. You're the key man. And also, just for financial planning. You want, in the next 5 years, I want to have achieved this. In the next so many years, I want to have achieved this. When you're planning to achieve so much, then you've got to start making sure the cash you're working so hard to build is also secured. And how do you secure it? I've got to get my house insured. And when I'm getting my house insured, even the phone can get lost. My iPad can get broken. It's 50,000, it's 100,000. Well, it looks like it is small money, but then when something happens to it, you've got to spend that money. Maybe you would have bought groceries with that money and saved that money. You would have put in some interest earning savings somewhere. Then you'll be building your wealth. You'll be building your wealth instead of spending it. So those are some of the things that I tell people. It helps you transfer risks that you'd have otherwise spent money on. And it could be simple little things, not even just affecting you as a life, but even the things that you have to fix, whether it's your car, it's your house, it's your iPad, little things. So you need to do that to mitigate and transfer the risks.
Okay, thanks. I'd also like us to talk a little bit about what's the best financial advice that you've been given and that you've actually used, and give us some financial tips for women out there.
So some of the best financial advice that I've gotten, first it starts with my father when I was just starting to work. Always save. Eat some money, save some money. Always save some money, because that money comes in handy when you need it. And I know there's one time a friend told me, you've got to be able to survive for 2 years. If you're employed, you should be able to survive for 2 years without a job from the savings.
Okay.
Wow, that was something I still, up to today, I keep telling myself, can I survive for 2 years? That means your life must not change for 2 years. And that's very, very, very powerful. Another thing is other streams of income. You've got your salary, can you be able to use that money to give you other streams of income? Can you put some money, of course now you're taking mitigation of your risks, can you put some money maybe in your bonds? Can you put some money maybe anything? Some people do farming, some people do many other things, some people have shops, there's so many other things. You find those little streams of income here and there, they're able to propel you financially, and they're able to sustain you and stabilize you, and you're able to build wealth that way. And again, I remember my father used to tell me, the permanent job that you have is the one that is yours. The one that you actually are skilled. You can go and sell it and get paid for it. You can work on that even when you're 70, 80, you can continue working, Maybe as professionals, we can still do consultancies afterwards and all that. But I find sometimes when I go to the salon, I see the hairdressers and how they're just doing it. And I'm like, oh my God, I wish I had such a skill. Remember now this person can just work forever. It's a skill. I see people who make clothes. I see people who do things, certain things that you can do with your hands. If you can learn something, learn it and do it and perfect it and use it to make money out of it. If you can cook, why not? If you have culinary skills, why not make stuff? Whether you can do pastries and all and sell, do it. It can be another side hustle. So that's what I tell people, have multiple streams of income. They come in handy to help you build wealth.
Okay. Now, as we wrap up, maybe you could tell us, what does success mean to you, and what has been the biggest success in your life?
For me, success is how many people have I impacted positively? How many people have I impacted? When I'm in my journey of life, I believe in giving back. So as a leader, what are the things that I believe in? I believe, first of all, you need to dignify people. When people are working for you, you get to appreciate that every time they're coming to show up to work, they're coming to add value. So are you able to see them? Are you able to see what value they bring? It doesn't matter the level. But when they know you see them and they're adding value, they'll continue adding value. So what I keep saying is, in my journey, those are some of the things that I try to do every day. How do I empower these people to even give more? When I am leading, how do I create the why? Whether it's at work, wherever you are, why am I here? Why are they here? What do they need to do? And what are the outcomes they expect? The outcomes could be results from work, and the outcomes could also be, I want to grow as a person. How is it impacting my life as a person, my career, my family? So when I see some of the people that I've worked with and we have journeyed together, I've mentored, some of them are even today heads of bancassurance, wherever. Some of them are senior leaders elsewhere. I always feel maybe I participated in making, some of them come to thank me, but I also thank them because I get to learn a lot from them. So I have come to appreciate that learning is continuous. You have to keep learning, you have to keep growing, and you must do something that impacts, not just for the money, but what is this that you can do that touches lives and makes lives better and is sustainable. You can't just lead and then tomorrow you go and that is it. Today I've impacted Claire, I've impacted somebody else, I've impacted somebody else. They have people behind them, they are also impacting them, and the society becomes better as we go. And when you look back, you're saying, at least there was a difference that was created there. At least there was a difference. But for me, it's more about impacting people. That for me is the big deal here.
You've heard it from Julia Shisia, the head of bancassurance at Absa Bank Kenya. It's about impact. What impact are you making? Make sure you're making a positive impact in whatever space you find yourself in. This has been She Means Business. I have been your host, Claire Munde. Until next time, have a good one.